She had served hundreds of customers before, some kind, some cruel, but that morning felt different. The moment the elegant older woman stepped into the restaurant, heads turned. Diamonds, designer clothes, and the kind of confidence that came from unimaginable wealth. The waitress smiled politely, not knowing that one small detail, a simple silver necklace around her neck, would bring the entire room to a standstill. When the billionaire grandma looked up and saw it, her expression changed instantly. Her fork froze mid-air. The color drained from her face. For a few seconds, she couldn't breathe. Everyone watched in confusion as the woman's eyes filled with tears, trembling like she'd seen a ghost. The young waitress had no idea why. To her, it was just a necklace, something she wore every day without a second thought. But to that woman, it meant something far deeper. Something she thought was gone forever. What secret could one necklace possibly hold that would bring a billionaire to tears? And tell me, where are you watching this story from right now? Before that morning, Jasmine's life was simple, quiet, even. She worked long shifts at a small, family-owned restaurant on the edge of town. The kind of place where regulars ordered the same breakfast every day, and laughter mixed with the smell of coffee. At 27, she had learned to smile through exhaustion, to stay calm when customers weren't kind, and to find small joy in the rhythm of her routine. She was proud of how far she'd come, balancing 2 jobs, helping her younger brother through school, and keeping her mother's memory alive through one precious keepsake, a silver necklace with a faded engraving. Most people never noticed it. To Jasmine, it wasn't about beauty, it was about belonging. Her mother used to tell her, "This necklace has a story, baby. A story about strength." That day started like any other. Morning rush, endless coffee refills, soft music playing in the background. Until the door opened, and an older woman in pearls and a tailored coat walked in with her driver. Jasmine greeted her with the same warmth she gave everyone. She had no idea this customer would shatter the normal rhythm of her day, and that one glance at her necklace would uncover a connection buried for decades. The woman's presence changed the entire atmosphere of the restaurant. Conversations softened, and even the manager straightened his tie as he approached her table. She was known around town, Margaret Whitmore, the billionaire philanthropist whose family name appeared on hospitals and university buildings. To Jasmine, she was just another customer. She didn't notice the glances from her co-workers, the nervous whispers that followed every movement of the older woman. All she cared about was keeping her section running smoothly. When Jasmine reached Margaret's table with a warm smile and a menu, the billionaire barely looked up. Her tone was polite but distant, cold in a way that made people feel small. Jasmine didn't flinch. She'd dealt with that tone before. As she leaned forward to pour water, light caught the silver around her neck. Margaret's eyes locked on it. Her entire body stiffened. Jasmine noticed but brushed it off, assuming it was just curiosity. But as she walked away, she could feel the woman's gaze burning into her back. Minutes later, the kitchen door swung open. "Table 3 wants you again," her co-worker said quietly. "She asked for you, by name." When Jasmine returned, Margaret seemed shaken. Her hands trembled slightly as she gestured for her to come closer. "That necklace," she whispered. "Where did you get it?" The question came out sharper than intended. Jasmine hesitated. "It was my mother's," she said softly. "She gave it to me before she passed." Margaret's expression faltered. Her eyes darted to the small engraving, barely visible after years of wear. She knew that symbol. It wasn't possible, but there it was, etched just as she remembered. Before Jasmine could ask what was wrong, Margaret's driver leaned over, murmuring something that made the woman's face harden again. She regained her composure, offering a stiff smile. "That's a lovely piece," she said, before turning away. But Jasmine could sense something had shifted. The billionaire's polite mask had cracked. For the rest of the morning, Margaret kept watching. Each time Jasmine passed, her eyes followed the necklace like it carried a ghost. The unease began to spread. Customers whispered, sensing tension but not knowing why. Then came the quiet moment that changed everything. Jasmine overheard Margaret speaking to her driver. The words were faint, but cruel enough to sting. "It's strange," Margaret muttered. That necklace looks just like my family's heirloom, and yet, she couldn't possibly have it. The words hit Jasmine like a slap. She didn't know what hurt more, the disbelief or the quiet assumption that someone like her couldn't own something valuable or meaningful. Still, she held her head high. Years of subtle prejudice had taught her how to hide her pain behind professionalism. But inside, something was breaking. When Margaret asked to speak with the manager, Jasmine's heart sank. Whispers spread. Some of the staff assumed she'd made a mistake. Others just stared. Margaret insisted on seeing Jasmine again, her voice sharper now. I want to know where she really got it, she said. That necklace belongs to my family. The room fell silent. Jasmine froze, disbelief washing over her. The accusation was quiet, but it carried weight. In that moment, her hard work, her kindness, and her dignity, all were overshadowed by one cruel assumption. Her manager's awkward apology only deepened the humiliation. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, he said. But everyone could feel the imbalance, the unspoken divide between wealth and servitude, privilege and prejudice. Jasmine stood still, tears threatening to surface. She wanted to explain, to defend herself, but part of her knew it wouldn't matter. To Margaret, she wasn't a person with a story. She was just a waitress who couldn't possibly belong to the world she came from. The silence stretched long enough to feel like judgment. Then Margaret stood, face pale but eyes burning with something between confusion and fear. Because deep down, she was starting to realize the impossible might be true. That necklace wasn't a copy. It was the necklace. The one that had vanished decades ago, along with a piece of her family's past. And the woman wearing it might just be the key to uncovering what really happened. The room felt heavy, like the air itself had turned against Jasmine. Every eye was on her, waiting for her to prove herself innocent of something she never stole. Her hands trembled as she reached for the necklace, fingers brushing the worn engraving. Margaret's voice cut through the silence. That pendant, she said, almost gasping, it belonged to my granddaughter. It was lost years ago. Jasmine's heart raced. My mother gave it to me, she whispered, confusion twisting in her chest. She said it was hers before I was born. The tension was unbearable. The manager looked trapped between loyalty to a customer and fairness to his employee. A few diners shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to listen, but no one looked away. Margaret demanded to see the engraving. Her driver stepped forward, towering over Jasmine as if to enforce her authority. Reluctantly, Jasmine unclasped the necklace and placed it on the table. For a moment, no one breathed. Margaret picked it up, turned it over, and froze. The faint inscription, "To my sweet Lily, forever loved," was still there. The same words Margaret herself had chosen decades ago. Her lips parted in disbelief. "Lily," she whispered. But confusion turned to horror as truth crashed over her. Lily had been her daughter, the one she'd disowned for loving a black man. The scandal had torn their family apart. Margaret's husband had forbidden the relationship, calling it a disgrace. When Lily refused to give him up, she was cut off forever. Margaret thought she'd left for good. But she never knew Lily had a child. And now, standing before her, wearing that lost necklace, was the granddaughter she never knew existed. Jasmine's voice trembled. "You knew my mother." Margaret's knees weakened. Her driver rushed to steady her, but she waved him off, tears blurring her vision. "She was my baby," she whispered. "They told me she ran away. That she didn't survive." The truth shattered the silence. The staff looked on in shock. Jasmine felt the floor tilt beneath her, pain, disbelief, and something else she couldn't name. All the years she'd spent wondering about her mother's past, the unanswered questions about why she'd grown up with so little, it all made sense now. Margaret dropped to her knees, clutching the necklace like it was a lifeline. "I'm so sorry," she cried. "I didn't know. I let them take her away." The billionaire who once looked down on her now knelt before her, broken. And right in this moment, when truth meets pain, when prejudice finally breaks, don't forget to subscribe for more stories that reveal the human side behind every headline. For Jasmine, It was both powerful and unbearable. The woman who had humiliated her minutes ago was now begging for forgiveness, for a sin committed long before Jasmine was even born. Her heart ached with a mix of rage and sorrow. Because this wasn't just about a necklace. It was about generations of pain finally colliding in one small restaurant. And as Margaret reached out, trembling, to embrace her, Jasmine hesitated, caught between the urge to forgive and the weight of everything her mother had endured. The cameras of cell phones began to rise, recording what no one could believe. This was more than a family secret. It was history, unraveling right in front of them. For a long moment, no one spoke. The restaurant, once filled with chatter and clinking dishes, had fallen silent. Margaret remained kneeling, her tears staining the tiled floor. Jasmine stood frozen, her thoughts spinning through memories that suddenly made sense in a way they never had before. She remembered her mother's stories, the ones she used to tell late at night. How love could be powerful enough to break families. How society had once made it dangerous for two people to love across color. Jasmine never imagined those stories were her mother's own truth. Margaret wanted to fix everything at once. She begged for forgiveness, offered money, and offered anything to erase the past. But Jasmine didn't need wealth, she needed understanding. She needed acknowledgement of what her mother had lost. The story spread quickly. A billionaire was found crying in a small-town diner, clutching a necklace that connected her to the granddaughter she'd never met. Some called it heartwarming. Others saw it for what it really was, a reflection of the quiet pain racism leaves behind, long after headlines fade. In the days that followed, Margaret returned, not with her driver, but alone. She sat at Jasmine's table, the same one where everything had fallen apart. And this time, she didn't order food. She listened. Jasmine told her about her mother's struggles, the jobs she'd worked, the discrimination she'd faced, and the dignity she'd fought to keep. Margaret listened through tears, realizing that her silence all those years ago had cost her more than she ever knew. It wasn't a fairy-tale ending. Forgiveness didn't come instantly. But it began. Slowly, painfully, honestly. Jasmine learnt that healing doesn't always mean forgetting, it means refusing to let the past define who you become. Margaret learnt that love isn't pure unless it's free from prejudice. And together, they carried both grief and grace, rebuilding a connection that hate had once destroyed. Word of their story traveled beyond that town. It reminded people that racism doesn't just live in words or laws, it lingers in families, in silence, in the things left unsaid. For Jasmine, life at the diner went on. But something had changed. When customers came in and looked past her, she no longer felt invisible. She carried her history proudly, every scar, every struggle, every victory her mother had handed down. And for Margaret, every time she saw that necklace, she didn't just see loss anymore. She saw the truth she'd once been too blind to face, that love doesn't recognize race, but people do, and that's where the work must begin. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a necklace. It was about how one moment of truth can expose generations of silence. Because racism doesn't always shout, it whispers, hides, and passes itself quietly through time. The real question is how many more families will it break before we finally choose to listen, to change, and to love without conditions?